Testing, testing.
Hello? You good?
You just let me know when you're ready.
How long's this gonna take?
We're going to take it back all the way to 2023, 2024. Everything is in the midst of a different mindset for many of us, where we're diving into a lot of different things of media. And from it, we're also looking into a lot of different programs to where certain people are looking into bigger name productions. Others are looking into spaces that may or may not seem to be on the level that we know today. And then for the rest, it's just trying to pick apart the media that we find an attachment to from an adaptation standpoint that very few really dived into, to then give an overall thought process that was set to be probably a few people's biggest reviews at the time. This is a review that was supposed to come out years ago, with a totally different vibe, a totally different way of the actions going into it, and with a whole different coverage of affairs. Since then, had to do some restructures, do some reevaluations, and even try to do some spark notes from the book to make this brand new review possible. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my long-awaited review for Amazon's Daisy Jones and the Six.
Okay, let's get this started. This is Honeycomb, take one.
What do you think the song's about?
What do I think the song is about? What the song
what
that I
is the
wrote?
song
What do I
about?
think the song that I wrote is about? It's about starting a new life, Daisy. It's about redemption.
Redemption from what?
From letting people down.
So guilt. It's about guilt.
No, it's not about guilt.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to pry or anything. I'm just trying to, get us on the same page and understand the story better so that I can help, which is, I think that's why I'm here. I'm assuming it's about you. Okay, so you let somebody down, right? And now you're saying, everything's fine. Look at us now. Everything's in the past. Nothing.
Yeah, what's wrong with that?
I don't believe it. And it doesn't sound honest, and it sounds simple. And I don't know you very well. You don't seem simple to me.
Oh, thank you.
Before we get into this overall video, let me just preference one thing. I'm going to be repeating myself a lot for the same point because in my line of work, sometimes people don't hear you the first time, or the third time, or the fifth time. So allow me to make my point clear right here, right now about the plot for Daisy Jones and the Six. This is not a love story, and I'm tired of people telling me that it is. This is a story about how a label manufactures people into becoming their worst selves and trying to sell us on a narrative that does not exist, while at the same time having power-hungry people on their desire to become rich and famous, do whatever it takes, and saying damn the consequences. Allow me to explain. With how we have things with Billy Dunn just being dragged into all of this thanks to his little brother of Graham, because he's like, oh, I want to start up a whole band. And his friends are just like, hey, get Billy involved, because Billy is older. He only has two options of either joining the army, which at this time is during I believe the late 60s, early 70s, so, boy, that's not a good option. Or working in the mines where they work in middle America, if memory serves. So he's just trying to do this because he loves his little brother, as any person would in a healthy family, and so forth. We get it to where Billy's dream of being a musician that would have gradually developed when he would be in the mines of just, maybe he works on it little by little, gets a small following in his small town, record labels would probably just mosey on in. And this isn't even a far-fetched story because we have seen this in real life with many different bands, sometimes just sending out different things in different parts of their lives to Hollywood for the labels to understand where they're coming from. But, we can't have that. Instead, we just have rushed fealty which then also has some fuck-ass idiot by the name of Eddie develop some complex with Billy, even though if he took like 2.2 seconds, he'd realize the person to blame for all of this would be Graham for shoehorning in his brother, never really understanding if maybe this might not be Billy's exact dream, at least not right now. Maybe down the line, but not right now. But that's just the narrative for how the 6 kicks off. But what about Daisy? Daisy, not her real name. Daisy is a rich girl who just wants to have a sense of identity away from her family. So she rebels. That's the golden story. She rebels to then try to find herself in the music scene, which of course leads her to try to be a backdoor. Backstore would still be a nice little ring to it for groupies, but backdoor groupies that end up going backstage in the hopes of learning from the band and maybe seeing if they could get their first kiss from their favorite celebrity crush. Never turns out that way. The show tries to make it as little to the creepy factor as possible, but really ask some former groupies how things go with older bands. It's very disturbing. So we have it to where our narrative is about people with the ideology of pursuing a dream in music because of either escapism or maybe it's just for the passion of it all. Even in that whole span of it with Billy just kind of being shoehorned in because of his little brother to be in the band that just became his band because, well, sometimes when you give someone a false ego for the sake of your own dream, they end up living to your fantasy to become your mouthpiece without you realizing it. Thanks, therapy, for telling me about how that works. Billy only becomes more driven by this goal because he and Graham see their distant father, where we kind of get better context into the whole thing of they're just 2 brothers with a single mom because their dad is an alcoholic and also a Rolling Stone. From there, just meeting dear old Papa, it leads into them, of course, having the goal and desire to become a band because of a middle finger to dear old Papa, the Rolling Stone. Not those Rolling Stones, just the Rolling Stone himself. While at the same time, Daisy's whole thing is just, well, I feel like I have no voice with men, so I want to become a star on my own. As a woman in the 60s, where that's sometimes really impossible depending on how people rewrite how music history works. Music history gets very, very weird when you play fast and loose. So that's basically the plot to set up a making the band or a behind the music documentary sort of stuff where when you really dissect the plot, it's not really a love story like how it's trying to base itself around the most controversial in-band romances between Stevie Nicks and from Fleetwood Mac. No. That one at least had the semblance of them organically having a romance that then blew up to be very ugly. No. From how the book then translates, of course, to the overall streaming screen, probably would have been good as a TV show on a national network like HBO or Stars. Maybe not Cinemax, but, maybe HBO or Stars. We'll never know. Or Showtime, now that I'm thinking about it. One of those 3 networks, probably. Anyway, so the whole entire thing goes back to the first point that I was saying about it's not really a love story, and it's less of a success story by their own means, because this is basically a show that puts the message more in your face than most people realize about the music industry. And that is one solid thing. Your dream means nothing if a label can't restructure your life around their desires and their machinations. Because originally, Billy and his people were able to impress who they needed to get their start once they got themselves rolling, got their official band. One of the people who was a composite character went on to be a dentist, so they picked up Karen, who's a really interesting British pianist who Graham has a crush on. And so they end up going to LA right after Billy gets his wife Camilla when she was just his girlfriend, and she wanted to be a famous photographer. They hit the ground running because they meet a guy named Roy, who is a pretty good road manager who is basically helping them get their start, blah, 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 blah. To then also meet a really big-time producer man by the name of Teddy. Teddy tries to give them a shot. They blow them out of the water, but it's less and less the rags to riches story that you guys think, because music is never that cut and dry. The music industry is always a bit of a song and dance with the sinful natures of it all. They want you to do certain things as a hazing ritual for your first album to make or break you, which they did with the Six. And so from there with Billy, during a time period where people didn't understand how addiction worked, he crashed out right at the same time that his wife Camilla was about to have their daughter, a little precious baby. So he had to spend some time in rehab, but of course, again, this is during a time period where no one understood how addiction worked, and then wanted him to get straight back on the wagon when he just wanted to do stuff his own way. But the hazing ritual from the labels set into effect. They couldn't cut it the same way that people from, that's my cat in the background, the same way that people may or may not do stuff for a fraternity or sorority. And so they then renegotiate the terms to then mold their own thing. And the producers know how the labels work. So here's the interesting part, because I'm only focusing on the Six primarily right now, because Daisy is just a cog in the machine for the label. So they manufacture putting them together through the lens of the producer to shove them into this whole entire dichotomy for a relationship that means nothing. Because in the end-all be-all of it all, it doesn't mean anything. Billy would have just been fine as like a sleeper hit album for them to just push off for a tax write-off. Been there, done that, done. No one has to ask questions. They just slowly put him out to pasture. His wife could just support them while he maybe would become just the songwriter. No big fucking deal. Just move the people around of like, hey, your album didn't sell, so do some songwriting for our bigger talents. Push it for a different method. Would have been better that way, but no. No, not for the plot that we're going for. No, instead we just pick up this woman who, although has talent, is brash, is unrefined, is untrained, has no real pushback against the media, only feeding into their desire for drama, for sensationalism, for all this sort of stuff that really is a PR nightmare. And we're gonna smash them together to then manufacture a romance by constantly shoving them into each other's spaces. And it's not just the label that kind of does this, which is where it gets very tragic in why this isn't a romance. I'm going to keep repeating that until it sinks into people's heads that this is not a romance. Romance comes where it's organically chosen to develop on its own unique plateau. You can't force a twin soul situation with people in the hopes of getting your story, in the hopes of getting your byproduct, in the hopes of getting something without it blowing up in your face with how destructive it really is. Case in point, with Billy and Daisy, from not just the labels end, not just from Teddy, the producer's end, but from family and friends just trying to be absorbed in the machinations of the machine of music, they're led to believe that they can only do stuff if they have Daisy in the band to then make it officially Daisy Jones and the Six. Top billing and everything, even though they're the band that has the most credibility, the most experience with the industry at this point, the most everything. They're giving it to the most unrefined, unpolished, and completely giant PR nightmare of a person. Great job, people. So we smash those together, we force this whole bond, and then with it, the manufacturing effect infects the minds of the people in the machine to be like, no, we need her. We only are going to be at our best if we have this person. Even the loved ones would just be like, you need her to succeed. And that is a problematic sight for it all that really pushes why you shouldn't listen to how the machine of entertainment pushes back against the people that pour in themselves to make the industry what it is. Because realistically, Daisy could have just been a songwriter, and they could have just used her assistance to make the Six blow up as it is, maybe sending in some stuff from Billy to then go to Daisy, then have a middle person in the whole thoroughfare of it all to tighten up some stuff here and there of both visions, make all the songs to have the Six have a big comeback, bring her in for a couple of songs for the big album that they're gonna do of Aurora that ends up blowing up exponentially by this point, I should add, to where when it's all said and done, they didn't have to make it so Billy and Daisy were this, air quotes, couple du jour that has everything go about it. Because in actuality, if you really dissect things, Billy is a recovering addict who's trying to constantly prove himself to a wife that is honestly angry with him all the time because he wasn't there when their daughter was meant to be born. In his drug-induced states, he forgot his vows of marriage to then slip and then end up being with a lot of groupies in a van, which she caught him doing, which may have been going on for many, many different parts of their first tour, and so he has a chip on his shoulder. He's always trying to prove himself in a marriage that feels like it's on thin ice. Very, very rough times. And Daisy is a ticking time bomb of a person that is always angry with someone, always trying to prove something to someone, always in your face to then think the wrong thing to then make it a reality because she makes it a reality. So we're stuck with people with broken ideologies that need real psychological help. They need to still be in rehab for other stuff, but instead we're shoving these broken pieces of people into a very janky jigsaw puzzle that does not fit to form a very toxic romance that does not need to exist. They have zero authentic chemistry to be a couple, but when you force them into the situations to become more on brand, to be this, air quotes, desirable thing with his young ingenue by comparison, we don't get a real romance. If they were to build a relationship, it would be like friends or a brother-sister relationship if they really wanted to push things to a better degree, which would be more of a healthy dynamic for them overall, but no. So many things about seeing how Daisy does look at Billy and knowing how Billy has his own issues to where people will always put a lampshade over his head of like, you're gonna fuck up and do this, so why don't you just do that already? Because let me tell you, when people automatically put the whole lampshade assumption over your head, sometimes you just end up doing it because it's easier than just trying to prove them wrong. I should know. But I digress. We push through with the narrative where I'm trying to cut through all the bullshit of how the album is going, how the lyrics are going, because you guys are going to hear more about me talking about the music in the music segment, so who gives a shit? So in the whole crux of everything, while Graham is starting probably the most healthiest relationship in the show with Karen, Warren the drummer just is living his best life. We also have bitch-ass Eddie. Bitch-ass Eddie has been lusting after Billy's wife ever since. So when Camilla is just suspecting that Billy is stepping out on her, even though there is no actual proof, he's been doing his damnedest, he's just making the album, and he doesn't want his wife to just be like, well, I kind of want to still see if I could get that one song you owe me from when we were dating. Can I talk to her? And then he just feels like maybe it's going to throw off my creative process if I talk to my wife right now about this very big album that's way out of left field for myself. This is for a way different audience than what I would do for myself. If we were taking up all the context clues about where his mind is going, these songs from Aurora weren't really his desired thing. They were more for an audience that he doesn't really have a stake in, if you really think about it, because he's trying to be on a healthy road. These are damning lyrics for a damning situation for a damning audience. But who cares? Am I right, fellows? So when his wife is just like, oh, since you're not going to share the album, that means that you're sleeping with Daisy. So you know what? I'm going to go out and get some dick. And so she gets whiskey dick from Eddie, who's so love-struck over that whole thing. He's just like, oh, shit. I finally got one over Billy. I get to have his wife. She gonna leave his ass for me. Only to then find out sometime later that she's just like, oh no, it was just a revenge thing. But I'm glad that we had this whole talk. This never gonna happen again, player. Goodbye. And so that's kind of just the whole big thing. Where I would also like to talk about Daisy's fuck-ass husband, but if honesty is honesty, I'm not gonna talk about Nikki, because Nikki's whole thing is just more manufactured plot stuff to be more stuff from what the machine has already done to mess up these two people's heads that really needed psychological help, maybe a better outlet for their stuff. And so we then finally get their last big show that's kind of more focused on about how the band broke up in the first place during their hugest performance on tour that also was their last show on tour because of so many things that happened, where Billy finds out from Eddie that he slept with his wife because Camilla thinks that Billy is cheating on her with Daisy, even though Daisy also admits to Camilla that she is not sleeping with Billy. But Camilla still thinks that Daisy, although the only one with an actual crush on Billy organically, is trying to do all this stuff because in her own weird way, because of the machine, she thinks that they deserve each other. Even though throughout the whole series, we do see that Billy has more love for Camilla than he does Daisy, which then has a big blow-up affair with the whole show. But at the same time, with how Warren and Graham have their own stuff with their own romances, because Warren is apparently going to get married to a groupie. Fun for him. Graham wants to have a life with Karen, but Karen is too afraid of commitment, so she just lies to him about what she wants, which leads into a very messy breakup for them, for like an entire romance that really took off very well. They honestly were an organic couple that worked. And I wish the show was more about Graham and Karen's romance than this fake ass shit. Sorry, it is now getting hot outside, so you guys are gonna have a weird audio quality from this point of the overall plot segment. So, from this whole thing, Billy slips off the wagon because he's just like, well, my wife is trying to leave me because of accusations, so let's make the accusations real. Let me just, slip my dick into you, just I do some coke, we then make out, we then fuck. But Daisy finally is like, you know what? This is unhealthy. We should not be doing this. This is not a good look. Go be with your wife because you genuinely love Camilla. This is not for you. I am not for you because I need help. And then at this point, you're just like, wow, that is so brave that you guys automatically are doing the one thing that the labels did not want, because this is how the band breaks up. Eddie gets his ass kicked and then gets kicked out of the band. And then Billy walks off to be with his wife. Daisy goes to rehab, so they have to cancel all the remaining shows. And so the band is no longer a band. They still make a lot of fucking money, though. So, what's the whole point of the plot? Well, for many people, it's just that Daisy and Billy are a couple that belong together. There's this whole painted avenue for things where Billy and Daisy are supposed to be this star-crossed lovers narrative, these twin souls drifting through the night. No, they are not. They are friends that are forced into a romance from outside forces that make it an unrealistic couple in a toxic environment. And that is how tragic it can be in the music industry of trying to manufacture your own relationships with people that really should not go into certain levels. And that is something I don't think a lot of people dissect properly, and I don't think the author of the original novel that this is based on really kind of pieced together in different places. Because although it's based around something loosely, that is integral to music history, it's not the same. That romance that was in Fleetwood Mac, that's an entirely different can of worms you have to ask the band directly about. You can't just do these small assumption things from the Rumors album, from small little things here and there. You have to talk to the band to understand that story. But Billy and Daisy, using Amazon of all things, aka VOT International, about how manufacturing relationships, although under the radar, does lead into some fucked up shit when you don't understand anything about the real overall constructive destruction that they do to people's lives. I know that sentence makes no sense, but honestly, work in the entertainment industry, this shit's kind of fucking messy. Because that is the whole fucking thing with this goddamn show. And I want to love it more than I do. And I like watching Daisy Jones and the Six. It's probably got my favorite brand of folk music and folk rock I could have ever imagined, with amazing acting all around. But for the fact of the story being portrayed as a romance is not at all what this is. This is a problem from a problematic area that we, the people, do not address enough. But I digress. This is actually a lot calmer than the original take that I did, which you guys could probably hear from me if you want on the new Patreon I'm putting together, so you just let me know in the comments, because, oh boy, that one is way more passionate and way more aggressive than me tell you would.
I know you've been dealing with a lot of pressure, stressing when you got a second smile for me.
Before we get into characters, I'm going to preference that I was in the midst of making this both during a rough period, but also in probably a very interesting point in my life at the time. So I apologize if I seem a little bit off on this segment. It's not that I am purposely trying to be off kilter or repeat myself over and over again. It's just, at this moment in time in the recording, a lot of stuff was happening, and certain elements behind the scenes involving someone who was supposed to be in the original review did not really help matters. But I take full responsibility because that's on me at the end of the day. I have to be cognizant of my emotions and my own headspace, but for a show that also covers where people at their lowest or at their most destructive are doing things, I still have to power through and show you guys all these different facets, even if I had to redo the plot segment. But without further ado, with this disclaimer out of the way, let's dive into the characters segment. Here we are in characters, where now I have to apologize from the plot segment. I got characters mixed up. It's Graham, who is Billy's brother, and Warren is the band douchebag, aka the bassist, who was once on lead guitar. Anyway, it took a while for my brain to finally get that whole thing back in order. So characters. I could go into the band members, but honestly, with the drummer being the most hilarious meme I've ever witnessed in my life, the pianist of Karen, honestly not being a bad character, Graham being both good and bad at the same time for what I've already addressed in the plot, Warren deserving to have his teeth kicked in and then being left on the side of the road just trying to put him back in his mouth. I think the only three I would like to talk about are Camilla, Daisy, and Billy in that order. Now, I didn't really want to read the book. That was something I was going to leave up to my little sister Shan to help me out with, but at the time I'm recording this, I didn't really feel like bothering Shan about it. So, Camilla from the adaptation, she does have a lot of say and sway in a lot of different things of standing up for herself, really trying to be in Billy's face when he fucks up and fails, to where when he's not there for their daughter, she makes him go through the paces to earn back her trust and earn back the love of his family, because he did screw over a lot of people when he did have a drug problem. Wasn't helped by the band because a lot of people didn't, again, understand about drug problems and substance abuse being a fucking contributing factor to many people's problems, but what can you fucking do? So from all of that stuff, It's great to see an empowering woman in a what could have been a healthy dynamic and healthy relationship put her foot down and showcase that it's not always about putting down your partner when they're failing, but making sure that they hold accountable on their own terms so that they can earn back your trust and get the respect back in your eyes throughout their own actions without you trying to dogpile and just trying to constantly drill at them without real consideration, which is very rare even today, because we're so used to just trying to be like, we're on the up foot. No, I'm on the up foot. No, I'm on the up foot. But it slowly declines when Camilla, who can see that Billy is uncomfortable with Daisy just being there because maybe she's just inexperienced. Maybe she's a dark reflection of where he once was. Or maybe he just thinks that she is a dangerous element that would ruin everything that they're building because he wants to do better by his wife and daughter. She's trying to co-sign a lot of the things to then make Daisy a permanent fixture that her husband did not want. And from there, when they start fighting and arguing, not Camilla and Billy, Billy and Daisy, it then just showcases a weird side to Camilla where she's just like, oh, we used to fight like this. We don't fight anymore. What, you fucking Daisy now? You're fucking Daisy? Is that it? I could understand a lot of things, including the substance abuse and maybe the drinking. But if you're fucking that girl... And then she goes on to fuck Warren because she's just kind of in a weird place of thinking, my husband doesn't find me attractive, so therefore let me sleep with a guy who's been creeping on me even when he knew I was married. Because he doesn't know boundaries and he has no idea about how people's interactions work properly. And then she's just very proud about expressing it near the tail end of the season. Well, series, I should say. People are still hoping for a season 2 years later. And when she's just proclaiming it, it does lead to a lot of backlash we'll be addressing with Billy's segment. But it's so off-kilter to have Camilla just be this paragon of what you'd want to see in a spouse for a fictional story like this, and then take a weird nosedive of inviting the element to stay with her husband, with coercion to make him stay, and then see the elements happening that her husband did warn her about, but in turn blame him for things that aren't really happening, choose to make him into this random cuck, and then out of the blue start to be back to herself, and then go into vilifying him again. And then they end up separated to then rebuild the relationship from a problem that she, the band, the guy Teddy, who is their man with the label itself, and various other people that were forcing this romance to then go back in this whole thing of Billy was wrong because it says so in the source material. So therefore, Camilla is justified. Okay, sure, Amazon, I'll buy that. Daisy Jones. I'm not saying her actual name because I forgot what the fuck it was. I'm not gonna lie. Editors, please do your thing. Show it on the screen. Anyway, so about this whole thing with Daisy. Born with a silver spoon in her mouth, but being left in that whole thing of, oh, I was just, unloved. I didn't really have the attention of my parents. I had nothing. I just wanted a little piece of my own, so I snuck out of my neighborhood to then see what the other people had. That whole weird fish out of water story that many people would understand. But then when you're slowly getting further and further into the time period that we have about the wealthy people trying to then mix and mingle with the everyday man, woman, and child, you kind of then tilting your head just like, seems a little bit suspicious. Seems a little bit suspicious that you come in here with your jewel dishes. And now you trying to just scream out about all this stuff because y'all some rich bitches. That just seems so suspicious. But even still, with how the story goes, where Daisy was unfortunately taken advantage of by various bands that she would sneak in to see, that's not me trying to victim blame. That's just like she went in to see these bands and then she got assaulted. That just put the lens to the bands of like, oh, she just seems like a child. She seems so naive. Really putting on that creepy vibe. Putting on that creepy vibe. Anyway, so from there, it's a weird spiral affair of Daisy will do things, and then because of her self-destructive nature, she'll take that whole victim energy that she's feeling to lash out, which then creates other issues like having her song stolen, having her overall vibe ripped away, getting her shit rocked in various different mannerisms, which cost her her own solo contract thanks to Teddy being this, again, production legend that would have sent her soaring into the skies as a solo artist. She would have had so much going for herself, but she wants to keep lashing out because she didn't feel like she deserved it, which is a good narrative in and of itself, which could have been explored better. And then it gets to the point where she's partnered with Billy Dunn to make the song Honeycomb, parentheses, look at us now. And with the weird push that's happening where they want to make a version of the song that's about maybe less redemption, maybe more on a twisted thing of a toxic relationship that's supposed to be temptation weaving itself into the membrane of other people. And then you're sitting here listening to those lyrics, hoping to do the redemption angle that was Billy's original vision. But then it's painting a picture that Daisy maybe is like, oh, I could have a beautiful relationship with this man I know nothing about. I could deduce what the songs are for and then kind of shit on him for it because I don't know what he's going through and what's happening in his mindset. And then just insert my shit the way that it's going to be in this, that, and the third thing. And then it gets worse and worse because of not only Daisy not being properly taught how to work in the studio for musicians and all the stuff with the label and the band not seemingly doing anything to help her navigate stuff properly. It's a weird dichotomy to where you're like, I feel bad for Daisy, but she's also kind of the author of her own problems. It's weird. Like, I don't know how that works, where she's both a problem character, but also a perpetual victim because of the narrative. I don't understand how that works, but I am fascinated by how deplorably awful that is, even though it also leads to her consciously making more and more bad decisions because the lash out's becoming more and more effective. It's no longer about her being the victim. She's her own villain that creates more villainous sub-stories within her own complex world. And that world bleeds into everyone else's narrative because it's a collaborative affair being a musician in a band with a prominent label trying to push your shit forward. Am I ever going to say the label? Am I going to talk about Teddy? Fuck no! That's not the point of Daisy Jones and the Six. It's about Daisy Jones and Billy, and then the people that kind of put them in this whole narrative spiral to begin with. And so far, we just have so many tragic characters, you're just like, I don't know where to fucking start. And if this is just me going in about Daisy and Camilla, the two women in Billy's life, what about Billy? So about Billy Dunn, the man that went from a complete 180 to his book counterpart, from what I've looked into, and all of the stuff thanks to Sam being an incredible actor to bring him to life, especially going with Elvis Presley's relative being his opposite as Daisy. and having Leonardo DiCaprio's take two, and having Leonardo DiCaprio's ex-girlfriend and model and actress being your fictional wife. Sam just had all of the wins and had musical training to go with everything to just have the voice of an angel. Damn! But anyway, about Billy the character, not the actors just being chosen for an incredible program. Although they're fucking messy when you look at it. Billy did have a complete change from what I looked into and from what I have heard. He is nowhere near the heel that he was supposed to be. This very belligerent figure, this kind of disrespectful figure, in a way that apparently the author is well known to write men, which is kind of problematic when you think about it. And all that sort of stuff, to just be a family man who just really wanted to be with his family. And all associated things with it. You're watching this unfold to, by, I would say, the 8th episode, when you get a real good picture for Billy, you do see that this is a man that never wanted any of this. He was happy in the Midwest with his mom, his brother, hated his dad. If he didn't meet his dad at a party that he was performing at, I don't think the Six would have ever have become what it is today. That is a nice linchpin, along with having Graham trick his brother into joining the band because he just wanted his brother in the band. And so when we're watching everything unfold, where Billy does seem more tragic the more you look at it, because it's not even like it's a forward dream that he wanted to pursue at the time that he did. And that's the ultimate problem I have when it comes to many people wanting to say that Billy is the bad guy. Billy is this awful person. No, we're thinking about two different Billies. I'm thinking about Billy from The Boys. You're thinking about Billy from the book. We're not thinking about Billy in the show, because he wanted to be there for his daughter's birth, had to go to rehab. He wanted to be more with his family. People wanted to push him to make some new songs and then hopefully get a brand new album with the record label. He wanted to not have Daisy in the band. No one really considered his options, and then just rammed her down his fucking throat until he just choked on it like he was a little bitch. All of that sort of stuff to just go into the recipe that Billy wasn't a really present character in most of the series. Yeah, he had choices when he was then thrusted into the situations, but the situations that he ended up getting into weren't even things that he wanted to create in the first place. He was puppeteered into all of these things because they took away his say. They took away his desire to do anything. They took away his meat into the overarching story at play. Everything about it wasn't about Billy having his own words being heard throughout anything. It was just thrown into the ether like he was one of those faces that everyone ignored constantly. And in doing so, led to a lot of different people either vilifying him, like Warren, just like, oh, Billy wants to take over the band. If you really think about it, Warren, you should be blaming Graham, because Billy just wanted to supervise and make sure you guys sounded good. He never wanted to be in the band. And you being on bass, that was from your friend wanting to leave to go into dental school, who is a composite character of two other characters that I'm not going to address right now. So why blame Billy for something where you could have easily have talked to other people about playing the bass when you were moving to start the band in California? You could have been active in the band that you are currently in. So why blame Billy for everything? You could have gotten a nice Hispanic baddie. You could have gotten a lot of things in life. Why blame Billy? Or with Camilla just like I stated before in her segment of the character stuff, she knew when to stand her ground to make sure that Billy heard things about where their marriage was going wrong. He was willing to do anything for her. And yet the ultimate problem still led into she didn't really listen to his side of things, and their relationship fell apart because she was pushing this overarching narrative that he didn't want a part of. So it's more or less buyer's remorse being shoved down his throat every fucking time he wanted to breathe. And now it's an imbalance in their marriage where his breaking point is, in a lot of different ways, justified. His wife wasn't actually listening. His family that was supposed to be there for him didn't really help him because of the lack of knowledge the 60s and 70s gave about substance abuse. His friends weren't really friends, and his only confidant was a person he didn't want to be around in the first place. So you're kind of left with a person who has a justifiable crashing out again at the height of his career. The tour that they went on is legendary in the series. And yet, the crash out is so valid, it is depressing. There is nothing about it that is heartwarming about how that crash out happened. Of him doing drugs again, drinking heavily, almost cheating on his wife at long last after the shit that he pulled the first tour when he was inexperienced, didn't know how to handle himself, and was an overarchingly immature child that didn't know what he wanted in life. With those two groupies in the van. Because, you know. So, that self-fulfilling prophecy that other people imposed onto Billy led to his ultimate downfall at the height of his career to just not really be at his best. And it didn't really leave him fulfilled. Where even the ending feels very choreographed of, we hear that you want to have your life strictly be at its best. But what if we just shove you back in this direction that we already puppeteered you with? Because we're just trying to shove it down your fucking throat that you need to be with this person that didn't help your life whatsoever. And it's so weird. And it's not just from these three people that I'm talking about. A lot of the directions that the characters took, whether they wanted to or not, doesn't feel as satisfactory as it should. But does that make it a bad narrative from a character standpoint? Here's the thing, guys. It doesn't. In actuality, it makes this more enriching from a character standpoint because they're so messy because a few people don't have a say in how their lives go. They don't have a say in where they're navigating, and they don't have an iota of a thought towards where things are going wrong. They're driven by these raw primal instincts at this point of fight or flight, survival, and how to process these weird gremlins in our noggins, that it's never about thinking clearly about the stuff. And even the star-crossed lovers narrative is thrown out the fucking window. It's never truly a love story. It's a story about how fragile the human condition can actually be, and the narrative is focusing on characters basically as lab rats in the thought experiment about what to do about the weird conditioning that we as a society will put onto others. That is intriguing. That is very fascinating. So anyway, let's get into the next segment, because I'm pretty sure people are just kind of like, what the fuck did this man just say?
That's the type I like. That's the type I like.
Music. I know for a show about music in this whole behind the music type of situation, it's supposed to be at the forefront and should be one of the biggest topics to talk about. Honestly, it's not that big of a topic to talk about. It is folk rock, progressive rock, and classic rock being the focus for everything, with a hint of grunge before grunge becomes a thing. Having it be that mean, very dark gothic blues mixed in with the rock in tones and shades, having a little bit of funk and psychedelia to go into early disco that then bridges into early hip-hop. The way that music is handled in the show is very nicely studied. Like, I know people say that the lyrics in the book are a whole lot better. Honestly, I'm kind of like, it's whatever your interest and your appeal centers are for things. Everything that you want from the book won't always be what you're looking for in its entirety on the screen. What you're looking for on the screen won't be what it is in the source material. For myself as a consumer, I prefer what the show did on all those different fronts, because that's what I enjoy. That's where my enjoyment came into the whole play. But I'm always open to hear from fans about what they liked. I am only doing small segments for a video like this because I'm already fighting back so many copyright claims. For these 2 Marauders Reviews episodes, I've had to do a lot of things behind the scenes. And I know so many people are just like, what the fuck are you doing that's making those 2 videos hold up? Trust me, we'll talk about that in another video. But overall, now that I'm getting that stuff out of the way now, Daisy Jones and the Six is definitely one of those programs that I have opinions about, where the music side of things, fantastic. How they handle stuff about a band and how they come together for the side characters, incredible and immaculate. The progression of certain people's story arcs about drug addiction, about how they do stuff with abuse and how that kind of tailor makes it into the process for creatives, very authentic. The downward spiral that comes from the pressures of fame, amazing. How they handled the star-crossed lovers narrative from someone that has been on that side of the fence and also has seen the evils that comes from the music industry to manufacture stuff to then brainwash the individuals to have a relationship. That's the part I don't really care for, especially if it's based around an actual band where the romance that they had, although wishy-washy, actually had more merit than what the book was covering to then go into what the TV show was adapting from one of the most corrupted companies I've ever seen, ran by the world's whitest goblin. So, what is the overall thoughts, though, if that is to be considered? Well, I would probably say if we only focused the show on the side characters more, the progression of things in the music industry, how they were doing other matters overall from the producer's side or from Simone's side, who I didn't even talk about because that's how little the show cared about all the things from Graham, from Warren, from all the different people across the board. I would have been fine doing that whole behind the music segment for all those people. Even about Billy with his wife Camilla and their daughter, who we find out more and more about from just how she interviewed people, the tenacity of her character, just kind of emulating both her parents in a very healthy dynamic. I would have loved all of those things. But to market it as a romance drama, I felt was the biggest nail in the coffin for me to have a better appeal for it, because thanks to therapy, thanks to actual relationships in my life, and thanks to living in the industry as an industry child most of my life. So, what is the overall thing I could say about this? Well, again, it's not terrible. It's a great show. The music is phenomenal. If you buy up the official soundtrack, I would say give it a fair listen if you like that whole interesting vibe of Fleetwood Mac with a little bit of REM on the side and some Hawkwind vibes just laced in for the psychedelia factors, with a little bit of Yes to then finish off stuff with some progressive notes towards, I'd say, before the record label signed them Beatles, and a weird aesthetic choices, and a pinch of, I'd say, the Rolling Stones. Honestly, a pinch of the Rolling Stones actually kind of fits that to a great deal. So, full-blown rating for Daisy Jones and the Six from everything I've talked about, aside from my intermediate tangents, because I have attention deficit disorder. I would say Daisy Jones and the Six for my normal rating charts would have to go like this. for characters, for storytelling, for the narrative progression, for the entertainment factor for myself, and from all the stuff coming into the play for behind the scenes, for casting, for all the essentials that are needed for television production. We're gonna give this 10.6 out of 13, giving it at least 4.5 out of 7 stars, and I'm gonna be really honest and give this a B-. It's not a terrible program by any stretch of the imagination. It has everything that you would need from a nice television show about a classic band in a different era just a couple of decades ago. They have the sound, they have the style, they have the bravado, they have the overall je ne sais quoi to go the distance. But of course, as a fictional band, they have to end up toppling for the IRL, the top chart artist of the times, to then make way, of course, to line up with history the best way possible. And, yeah, if they just rewrote how they did that romance, not just in the show, but in the book, would be a whole lot better, in my honest opinion. But overall, yeah, if you guys wanted me to say if I recommend it, should you give it a try, should you ignore it, I'd say at least give the show a try. It's not meant for everyone, because it's not a show meant for all audiences. But it does have its merits to be something grandiose if you want something of that vibe of, I want to chill out, listen to some music from back in the day, see the styles from way back when, and then understand where stuff is coming from an adaptation standpoint if I want to do something similar in the future. It's a good way to do media study as well as music theory on how to do stuff of different covers, how to do stuff for a production standpoint, and how certain music moguls do things for synergy's sakes, and even for how ghostwriters approach music in a much more authentic tone than other programs I've seen in modern media. Not essentially from classic media or even vintage media, but modern media nonetheless. But for romance stuff, again, no, that's just no. So this is probably going to be the last super huge Nomadic Reviews video I'm going to be doing for quite some time, where I split this up into segment, blah, 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 because I have to fully focus on the Mirage Reviews episodes, because I have 4 locked in, and 3 of which I have to do extra edits and even rewrites, because of the copyright laws being what they are. Anywho, I also want to make sure before I close out, I give a big round of applause and a huge thank you to my big sister Schweebs. I could not have done this review without you helping me with my intro, because I wanted to sell the vision nicely of that nice deceptive angle of MTV's behind the music, but also paying homage to what this overall production was based around. So I thank you, Schweebs. You are the greatest big sister, and I shall see all of you wonderful people in hopefully the next couple of videos, like the upcoming short film I'm doing, or hopefully the rock and roll episode. It's getting harder and harder to be a critic tuber, let me tell you what.